question now is, where does demo data come from? Because again, we're going back into designing our org structure. We need to understand where it comes from. Now, demo data is part of what we call data packages from Microsoft. So when you get Microsoft new, the D365, there's normally a package, a data package that comes with it, a design package. So it's part of that package, and it is loaded using what we call the data migration framework. The data migration tool in Dynamics that we use to migrate information, whether they are transactional data, master data, company data, is what is called data migration framework. So when you talk about data migration in Dynamics, you must mention DMF. That is the tool we use to migrate data from legal entity data down to transactional data. So you have to have that at the back of your mind. DMF is the tool we use to do data migration in Dynamics. And then we have talked about the concept of demo data. We have looked at it. What is it? Where data is coming from. How data is loaded. Because we're using a demo data, we just need to understand this, but we won't be going deep into this at this point. But you can see that all the data, master data, transaction data, setup data, the data migration framework, validation and controls, all are, that's how data is maintained, and it flows back into what we call the data lifecycle in Dynamics. So you can create data, you can update data, you can make data inactive, and you can report. That's basically the end-to-end flow of how data moves within Dynamics. And of course, we have seen, talking about data, we'll now look at data structure. Sorry for that spelling, guys. Data structure in D365. Data structure in D365. Now, before we go into setting up our legal entity, how is data structured in D365? How is data structured? Now, if you look at your screen, we have what we call two different types of data. Again, back to what Jide said, understanding data is key. And that is one of the structures. Don't rush into Dynamics without understanding what this data, the kind of data you're working on. One is what we call the company-specific data, and the other one is called the shared global data. And again, understanding this is very important. For the legacy, you can see some of the key characteristics here for the company-specific data. So when you're configuring, you're going to be seeing this data around. One is that data is isolated by company. So in Dynamics, there are some data you will come across. They are specific to that company code. So if you cannot see them in another company, they won't be available for you to use when you want to configure Dynamics. Two is they are visible only for the selected legal entity. So if my legal entity is PCS, it's when I select PCS, I can have access to that data. Otherwise, I will not see it. Three, there are three key characteristics of the company-specific data. Financial and transactional data is always company-specific. So if I have two legal entities, on the same platform, you cannot, if I don't have access to this one, I cannot see it. And again, when you're designing, the kind of information you will see for company-specific data is only the information that is specific to that company. You cannot see the other information that's not specific to yours. So you must switch company to view data. So if I want to view company A, just like I showed you, I open two different companies, USMF and PCS. If I want to see any of them, I have to switch to those companies to be able to see them. That's the concept of company-specific data. The next one is shared global data. Now, even within Dynamics, there is data that all the companies within Dynamics can access. So those data are available for any of the company codes within Dynamics to use, or any of the legal entities. One characteristic of that is an example of, just before I go, the example of company-specific data is customer data, vendor data, general ledger, sales orders, asset budgets. Again, the characteristics of shared data, one is data is common across all legal entities. So if we have 5 legal entities in the same server, I can see that kind of data. So I can see data for company A, even if I'm in company B. So those kind of data are also sitting in the system. So another example is that data is created once and used everywhere. That's another characteristic of the shared and global data. Two, it ensures standardization and consistency across the business, especially for global teams and for reduced duplication and effort. So if I'm in a global company that's in 26 countries, for example, and uh, since we're in 26 countries, it's easier for all of us to access the shared data. I mean, if I'm in China, if I'm in France, and I can access shared data. It helps our work as a global company. It saves us the stress of creating multiple data when we go to these countries. So yes, it reduces effort to a large extent. Examples of those data are chart of accounts, financial dimensions, organizational hierarchy, number sequence, units of measure, currencies, posting profiles, and fiscal calendars. These kind of data you can access, you know, irrespective of the company you have created. So it's good you understand the concept of company-specific data and shared data, because when you start configuring, you have to choose which of these to use at some point in time. So I'll go to the next thing. Now, before we also go into designing our legal entity, we need to understand the concept of filtering, sorting, and interface related to F&O. And it's quite interesting. Let me just so if I open a typical document, if I go back here and let me open a document so that you understand how this works. Okay, so now what we want to look at is how to sort, how to filter, how to look at interfaces, and by then we'll do that using a form in Dynamics. So this form is, you can see my view and we'll see sorting and all that, but let's move and see how all this works in the system. Okay, so I'm here, and the first thing we want to do, for example, if we go to accounts payable, for example, and we go to all vendors, this is what we call a form interface, and from there I'm going to show us how to filter and all that. I think I will use Contoso because I have more data there, but let me see. Not done any data here. Let me start this and let's see how this works. Yeah, this is up. All right, so if I go here and I go to accounts payable and I go to all vendors, I'm going to see probably a very large list of information, and I want to use that to explain the forms in Dynamics. Then when you understand the forms, then we can create a legal entity. Now, if you check this view here is very important. That's what we call the action pane. Is the top ribbon. It performs. You see different options we have here. We have edit, we have new, we have delete, we have procurement, invoice, general options. When you come into Dynamics, this action pane will be your very good friend. Very, very important. Most of the job we do is on the action pane. And then you have the search icon here. You can use to search anything on the icon on the action pane. If I go back, for example, if I want to see, for example, if I go to invoice and I go here, I want to see the list of invoice. I can select the kind of invoice I want to see if I select a particular customer, a particular vendor. So this is the action pane. And then this is the list grid. It's called a list or a grid view. So again, whenever you run most actions in Dynamics, you're going to see a list of things. right? So here is the list of all the suppliers in this legal entity, USMF. They have already been created, so they are existing as much as possible. And of course, if you drill down into any of them, if you click on any of them, it will take us now into the master data where we're supposed to now see all the details in this vendor. Now, see, this is all vendor, but my view, I'm looking at a particular vendor called Acme Office Supplies. And I can close up all these drop downs so that I can see the full function of this. So you can always make sure you use your drop. Now, what you see is a list of functions within this particular supplier master data. The first you see here is general. If I go to general, there are some detailed information that you have to provide. So when you're creating vendors, for example, there are certain details. And within each field, there are fields that are required and there are fields that are not required. And the system will prompt you in most cases for those required fields. For example, you see these ones on blue, you must provide them. And again, when you see an arrow, there are some that have arrow, there are some that don't. Some you just have to enter details. And some, once you see an arrow, it means you can drill down into those fields. So if I click the drop down, I should be able to see some list of suppliers. Or if I do, and again, I can just right click. And once you see view detail, it means it can take you to another field where you can create something else. So it's like a shortcut to where you can create something else. So here is how it's a detail about the address and other the customer master data, the name, the search name, and the address. How did I get here? I just did a right click on this drop down and go to view details. It just gives you extra layer of viewing that particular tab or field. And of course, we have a lot of details. So when you're creating one, you have to provide all these details. They are very, very important. Now, if I go back, another thing you need to understand is the sorting, filtering, like I said. There are tabs here. And of course, trust dynamics, just like you use Excel to filter and drill down. You can click on the drop down here to give you some option on sorting and of course some other option on what exactly you want to find. Now, I can choose to sort this vendor list from A to Z. If I click A to Z, it will sort them in that manner. Let me see, I'm not sure it done. So it has done this guy. So it has prioritized 1, 2, 3. So all of them are arranged. But you see, the name field is not arranged alphabetically. If I come here and I say A to Z for the name field, it's going to arrange it alphabetically. So basically just learning all these tabs are important. If I come and say, I want to see a vendor name that contains Z, and I apply, there's no vendor name that contains Z. But if I say I want to see, and I can go back, you see Z, I want to see a vendor name that contains G, and I apply, it will probably give me all the vendors name that contain G. So basically, it's just making sure you can filter things out. You can sort. And you can play around with the forms. Here is also, you can search in a very long way. I want to search for air, anything that has air. See, it has brought out air cargo. Sometimes you might have to put asterisks in front. So if you put asterisks in front, it means it should give you anything that starts with air. If you put asterisks behind, it will mean give me everything that starts and ends with air. So these are just some of those shortcuts we can use to navigate our way through the system. And is there any other thing? I think also, just as I said, I've explained this interface. There are always two fields you're going to see, the tax pane and the list grid. And again, in some cases, you will see fast tabs, just like we entered into this guy and we saw some fast tabs where you're supposed to provide certain details, and within those fast tabs you can also drill down to get more information. So this is just helping us navigate through the system and sort things out as much as possible. Now, the next thing we're going to look at, so if you have time, please go through and just, like I said, navigate the system, test all the functions. There is save, there is new. We'll learn that as we move on, so no pressure at all. So we have talked about this. We've talked about the grids, sorting, filtering, and the rest. Now, let's move on. And so let's look at core finance module configurations. So this initial part of this class is just to help us navigate. It's quite a simple and easy to use system. For those who have used more complicated ERPs, very sleek and very